Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Carthage at WCAZ Radio, celebrating its 100th anniversary on the air this year. Imagine, back in 1922, a radio station in Carthage, Illinois going on the air. It claims to be the second downstate radio station in existence in Illinois. And they're celebrating this year. And Mike Seaver, it's quite an achievement, and we're going to hear why, because not only did this little town radio station survive all those years, but it actually had some real scrapes with getting back on the air. But it's a big deal, isn't it, 100 years?
It really is. There are very few radio stations, particularly, with the same call letters that have been on the air 100 years. A lot of the AM radio stations are approaching their 100th anniversary, but very few of them have the original call letters that WCAZ has. They were issued to Bob Compton, Carthage native, in 1922, and they've remained in this county ever since.
We're going to learn more about the history, and we're also going to learn about, I talked about this scrape that you had with the SEC, with the FCC, that caused the closing of this radio station for a while, and we'll learn a little bit about how you got back on the air. But for the folks here, now we're on Main Street on the square here.
We are.
But it wasn't always here, was it? It was in a number of locations around
There was
Carthage.
5 or 6 different locations in town, yes.
One out of Carthage College was one.
Yes, it was.
And I guess all the other 5 locations were within about a block of the square.
They were all on the square.
Yeah. And we're going to also talk to some folks who have worked here through the years. It's probably, you called yourself a radio gypsy, right?
Yeah.
A lot of radio people are like that, where they hop around, they move around, and it's kind of interesting if you get a person that sticks around for any period of time, isn't it?
It is. It's very rare.
And you came back to radio.
I did. After about a 20-year absence.
Did you ever think you were crazy for doing so?
Sure.
Yeah. Listen, while I've got you here, you're one of the investors, you're one of the owners.
Yes.
And back in 2018, when the scrape I'm talking about with the FCC, you got back involved, helped get the station back on the air, and then you've been an investor ever since.
I have.
Why did you reinvest in radio?
Well, two reasons. Number one, I'm a Carthage native. This is my hometown, and I started in radio in 1959 here in Carthage.
At this station?
At this station.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And my family has been invested in Carthage most of their life. My dad worked here before he passed away, and I just wanted to see that call letters WCAZ remain active.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, listen, I would like you to take us in. And right now you got a young man that's on the air working the controls in there.
Sure.
So I'd kind of like to see for myself how a small station operates. Can we go in?
Well, let's go take a look.
Okay, thanks. Well, Brad still is the on-air personality. We're here in the afternoon. You come in early though, don't you, Brad?
I come in pretty early, 6:30 or so.
Wow, so your day's just about up by now, isn't it?
It is. It's a little past over. But
Yeah. Somebody come in to relieve you?
No, I'm the only on-air person. We do have someone that does sports games and those things.
I see. So whoever comes in later, everything will be programmed already, and
It's
they won't
programmed
need
and ready to go. Yep.
You and Dixie have taken care of that for the day, right?
Dixie does that work. I won't take credit.
Okay.
Dixie keeps the place rolling.
Yeah. A lot of us probably still think of, okay, here's what a radio guy does. There's vinyl records to spin, and there's music to announce, and there's news to read, but a lot of that stuff's taken care of for you digitally, isn't it?
Everything I do is digital. I've never spun a disc. I've never even played a CD.
Is that right?
It's pure
But
digital.
you do announce some music, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do announce music, but I do all of the music I do is we do digitally, and it comes in through this system, which is called Arrakis. Mm-hmm. So like this is the hour setup that we're in right now, and then over here, we'll go by time. But if you go up, so here's the song log.
Okay.
And then we have.
And that's already been programmed in.
Those are
song log. Okay.
They're either here before or I've put them in.
And we're country here, right?
This is
CAZ?
pure real country. Yep.
Okay. And so this knows when to play each tune.
Yes.
And then there are also, like when on your shift, there are breaks for obituaries and
Yes.
for announcements and community calendar and things
absolutely.
like that.
Or just any general fun stuff we would have put on.
So when you're not reading, what you're in here is to make sure that nothing goes awry, that
That is
everything
correct,
is going out of the air the way
which
the way it
does
should.
happen.
And this is how you know the level of the music, because what we're seeing there is the levels, right?
This is the in studio, so I know we have it off right now, of course, but that's how we know we're broadcasting. And then up here, we have the radio line, and then the online, like separate podcast line.
Ah, okay, all right, and that tells you that everything's going out the way it should.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And what is the computer screen over here for?
And this is the production computer. So in here, like when I record commercials and that as well. So this is actually Don Thurman, who's out there now, has just recorded a happy birthday. So this is where we mix it down, do the editing, tighten it up, and then we'll transfer it from this computer to this computer. Well, she's doing something now.
How long have you been, I'm asking this for a reason, how long have you been in radio?
I have been in radio for like 1 year.
Like 1 year. So radio has always been like this to you?
This is, I've never known it any other way.
Is it?
Yeah, digital
right.
is all I've
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I do, like when I do the obits, I send them right to a device. I don't even use papers.
Did you look at any of that stuff from 100 years ago? Did you look at any of those pictures of the
I
studio?
I'm familiar with the process. I mean, I grew up watching WKRP in Cincinnati, of course, as many people
Before
did.
digital.
And they were moving the tracks in and out and all that stuff. And I'm just like, it's not that easy, but it's much easier than they had it for sure. And I've had an opportunity to talk to some of the past DJs through interviews and whatnot, and we really got a good idea of the big difference. That I have it easy compared to them, for sure.
Well, thanks for showing us around. This is terrific.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out here. Like, big fan.
Don Thurman, we were just talking to Brad. He's been in this business for all of 1 year. All right? And he probably can't imagine. You were in for 47 years. You started in 1970. He probably can't imagine what your life was like when you went into that studio.
I was actually still in high school when I started. Jerry Nutt owned a radio station, and we used his equipment to do the football games at the high school. And that was my senior year of high school. I got to do up in the Crow's Nest. I was a band announcer for the band. And one of my memories from back then was the band would form like an umbrella. And I would just say, to the fans there, watch the band now as they perform, raindrops keep falling on my head. And that was how I got my familiarity with Jerry. And guys there at the school were saying, you're friends with Jerry, see about getting a job. And so after school one day, I stopped by and talked with Jerry about getting a job there. And he said, I can find something for you to do. And so I had to erase tapes and file records and stuff like that, and that's how I got started. I was part-time back then in '69, and then when I graduated in '70, went full-time.
And then you were on the air, right? And we were talking how much an on-air person had to do, because you started out with either vinyl or with tapes. And you were so busy because you had to time everything out, and you had to hit all the breaks. You pretty much had to do everything by yourself, didn't you?
Plus also what they called back timing back then. You had to make sure all the records ended and so on by a certain time of the hour. And that was something you kind of got onto.
And then you probably were ripping wire part of the time to deliver some of the news, right?
We had a UPI, United Press International machine, and one of my first on-air jobs was to rip and read the headlines. We didn't have the network audio feeds back then, and so I take the latest headlines off of the UPI machine and read those at the top of the hour. I said Jerry Nutt was the owner at that time, and I was just so nervous and so scared being on the radio because I'd never been used to it before, and I would have enough news there to fill 5 minutes. And I'd have it done in about 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, because he was reading so fast.
Just to get it done and over with. And I remember Jerry saying, "Where's the fire? Slow down." They can't even understand what you're saying. And eventually I learned how to, do things a little bit slower. And a lot of our listeners were senior citizens, and they appreciated that slower pace of delivering the news and stuff.
Don, thank you.
Sure, nice to meet you.
Greg Phelps, we've had an opportunity to talk to some of the former employees of WCAZ, and the reason I wanted to come talk to you are a former employee.
Right.
But you also had the foresight, when they closed in 2018, you were still with the station, you had the foresight to save some of the historical stuff, because a lot of it just got lost, didn't it?
Yeah, Exactly. You know, the equipment's gone. I think there were some plaques too, but history is a big part, and WCAZ had a huge part of area history, and it would be a shame all these old pictures to get lost to time and that. So I said to Rob Dunham, would you please let me take them over to the archives department at WIU? These guys do a fantastic job of preservation, and they'd be available for the ages, you know, and be available not just for Hancock County, but for McDonough, for, you know, Missouri, Iowa, whoever would want to see them. There were a lot of people that went through the station through the years.
Yeah, you were there from the 1994 to 2018. In fact, we can look at some pictures here that we have that from you and your time. This is the old studio. It's not the one they're in now, but it's very similar.
Right. This was on the west side of the Carthage Square, and this was taken, I believe, about mid-December, late December. We all came over to kind of, I guess, kind of say your goodbye to kind of the listeners and that. We talked about a lot of the history, a lot of the things we'd all experienced. Most of us at that time had been there for about 20 years or so. So that was the old studio right there. Actually would have been, Madison would have been the address of it. And of course, Don Thurman, Sandy Shawman, Rob Dunham, Keith Yex and myself were just having a conversation, sat down for about an hour and a half.
There were many generations that passed through there as employees and owners. Here, we've got a picture here of Jerry Nutt, who was one of the owners at the time. You knew him, I guess, didn't you?
Yeah, I met him when I was a kid, first started over there. In fact, we used to laughingly say he and his wife would be walking around the square, said there's a couple nuts loose on the square. Jerry was one of those, he was very hugely community involved. He loved to get out in the community, loved to do a lot of things. Was a great guy, great personality, a lot of fun to talk to.
And this was, you had DJ Day back in the day, and here's a look at some of the principals. And we were talking about Jerry Nutt. He's back in here with the Soup to Nuts shirt on, and a bunch of the folks that worked at the station there. And here's another one. Here, you did a lot of live stuff. Here's a choir that shows up into the studio to do some numbers to be put on the air, I guess, right?
Well, WCAZ was very much a generational radio station.
Yeah.
We had grandparents that had come into the studio. In fact, at that time, or for a while, the studio was where the Carthage Public Library is now. And they had come and done live performances. I don't know how many people I had talked to over the years that said, "Oh yeah, when I was young, I went over there and sang." Or, we'd done some church stuff. Church group had gone in there and sang. They were huge on live music through the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Not only live music, because you get a big mention here in the Peoria Journal-Star. This is the sports page, but if you look to here, that you have got to have leather lungs is the headline from this short, and it talks about the number of games, all kinds of games that your station broadcast.
We did. That was one of the things in the Rob Dunham era that we really expanded on. Keith Yex, myself, and Rob, we did a lot of games. In fact, that year we did 163 sports broadcasts throughout that whole year, from junior high, high school, pretty much everything.
That's almost every other day.
It was.
Oh, wow.
It was.
So were you doing play-by-play too?
Yes. Keith and I did the play-by-play on a lot of it. Rob manned the studio back in the day. I think I did over 100 games in the single season.
You were using a phone line, I'll bet, weren't you, to get back to the station?
Early days of cell phone, we were also using phone line a lot, and a thing we called the Marty, which was a remote transmitter.
Another thing the station did, and so talk about community involvement, and you happened to be a recipient of one of these, but this was the honor team. What was that all about?
The honor team was something that WCAZ had done for a lot of years, and we were still doing up until when I started as an employee, where we would give Hancock County area coaches the opportunity to bring athletes, and we would give them a free dinner, give them a certificate, kind of a way to say thank you for a great sports year. It used to be in the Riverfront restaurant up in Dallas City, of course, until it burned. But we did that banquet a lot, and it's funny that, and I can remember WCAZ broadcasting my high school ball games. They were always noted for that. Jerry Logan did them at that time. But you would get this certificate, you came and got a free meal, and for a high school kid, I mean, hey, that was
heck yes.
That was great.
WCAZ also brought a lot of entertainment to town, and there were big names that you wouldn't see otherwise unless there was a station to bring them into town. And we have examples here of some of these publicity photos that were actually signed over to you all through the years. Now, these are before your time, but maybe not before Thurman's time. No, before Thurman's time too. But this was in the old days, and these groups and these individual entertainers all came through, didn't they?
And of course, one of the most famous ones we've got in here is this smiling fella, Gene Autry.
Oh my goodness!
King of the Cowboys came
Oh
through.
yeah.
Came through and stopped at the radio station. I know Dennis Weaver stopped at one time. Of course, was a big star in the 70s. We used to have a lot of artists come through, and they would give their memorabilia. They would sign over things, local acts, because we were so famous for live music. And they would have a big studio, the microphone. They would bring them up and let them play on like a Saturday night.
Yeah, what a treat. You know, and that's before most people didn't have TV. They weren't able to see these people any other way. This was it.
Yeah, this was it. And you know, we had a lot of live performances. Our Sunday morning thing, we used to have a program called the Sunshine Hour, which were put on by a couple over in Burlington. I think it reached something like 12,000 broadcasts. It used to be on every day, then was on every Sunday. And we did a lot of live things. We did a lot of music. Music used to be such a great part, and it's nice to see them now carrying on that legacy.
This is precious too, because this would have been, not only did you do music, but you also had, during your melody hour, you would read poetry, or someone, whoever was in the area, would read poetry, and they would read out of this book, which was called Gems. And they're all kind of short, and I'm sure they're all kind of sentimental, and but this was a big part of it too, introducing people to all kinds of art.
Well, and Melody Hour was one of those big programs that did the live music, and like I said, all kinds of things they did. I had a grandmother that listened to them every day, even back in the days before I started. And I mentioned that we were a generational station. You had great grandparents that had had their games on our airwaves or had been on our airwaves all the way through to the the grandkids, and that was kind of the neat thing. It just made the area a big family.
You saved an old poster. Show it to us.
Yeah, this was one of the last banners we had. We were pretty proud of them. We used to put these out wherever we'd go to ball games and things like that.
Sure.
And I think this, had the old style microphone. This kind of said us, because we were a hometown family radio station. And that was one of the things we'd hang out at every ball game when we were live, when we were out doing things like that. This is one of the things we'd hang up, and it's been preserved pretty well. Pretty big piece of my life.
It's a pretty good thing you saved that, because they're all gone. I assume that this is it.
Yeah, pretty much everything, all the memorabilia like that is pretty much gone now. And it was a station that had a huge legacy. I mean, they said the call numbers are going 100 years. And actually, legend has it, one of the first stations to do live sports. It was one of the first stations. I mean, it was who you thought of for the community calendar, the church calendar, little things like that. We were a mom and pop station, and as I say, people liked us because it was just like a bunch of old friends when you turned on the radio, conversationally coming to you and just letting you know what was going on in the area. Because at the time I started, I know I was, just a little bit out of college, eager to set the world on fire. I said, they read the calendar and church calendar every single day. It's like, what is going on? But you found out that was a part of our legacy, was being the information place and just being a bunch of old friends you could tune in anytime and listen to.
You got your jacket still.
Yep, this was one of the things.
That's pretty sweet.
Nice satin jacket. This is what they used to wear. That was the old symbol when we did country music. The Little Cowboy was kind of infamous on all our apparel, and that a nice satin jacket, kind of the, I guess, kind of the 80s style team, high school type jacket.
Three-state country.
Yes.
So you went into Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois, huh?
Yeah, and we used to do a lot of live events. We didn't do much sports in Iowa and Missouri, but we did a lot of live events. We did used to have Mr. Mike Shea used to do some of our Iowa stuff, longtime broadcaster in the area. But we went down, we did live events. We did kids games. Yeah. We came out and did an hour's worth of kids games at a lot of different fairs and festivals just to get out in among the community.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for getting this stuff out for us. It's really been a pleasure seeing it, and thanks for the time.
Oh, you're very welcome, Mark.
Amy Graham, during part of this program, we talked about this hiatus when the CAZ was off the air, and the fact that it was pretty a lot of jeopardy during that time whether the little radio station would get back on the air. What happened was ownership got into a row with the FCC, and what happened was, as Mike was explaining to me, FCC redlined the station, which means forced it off the air for some violations. So you and the mayor and the community got involved because the people who were listeners, they made a lot of phone calls, didn't they? They didn't want their station off the air, and somehow in 6 months you got it back right again. Tell us how it happened.
Well, with the hard work of a lot of people that are in this community, proud of WCAZ and working together, it was blood, sweat, and tears, and let's move this forward and find some resources that we can pull and use, and search for a station that we could possibly buy, or could we get $9.90 back? There were all sorts of options, and so we needed to bring in as many people as we could that could help us get this off the ground, because basically we had to start from scratch.
What was the rub? What got the FCC to the point where they said, nope, you're off the air?
Well, I can't respond to that. I wasn't involved at that particular time. All I know is that WCAZ has been a lifeline to this community for many, many years. And when it went off the air, it was like losing a family member. We didn't have our local news, we didn't have our regular obituaries, we didn't have the farm reports. And so for many residents, they were just at a loss, and that's why they called the mayor and expressed their concerns.
Well, and people had to step up, because we talked to Mike Seaver. He became one of the 11 investors that put up some money to get it back on the air, but without local investors it wouldn't have happened either, right?
Well, that was one of the options. There were a few other options that we were considering, but really to keep WCAZ within local control, that was the best option. To get local investors and then get our radio station back on the air. It was unsurmountable, we thought, but it did happen within 6 months.
That's a pretty good time when you talk about the bureaucracy of trying to deal with a federal agency. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So we're very proud of our commitment and the folks that helped us do this.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Tricia, it's a big year.
It's a huge year for WCAZ.
It is. I mean, we just learned, this year almost didn't happen because in 2018 it was looking pretty iffy. But here we are, 2022, and it's 100 years.
And we were going to celebrate.
And okay, how?
We are. So with WCAZ's the call letters turning 100 years old, we decided to bring country music back to Hancock County.
What does that mean?
We're going to have a music concert on May 14th. So we are going to have Sequoia Drive, Liz Bentley, which is a local from Quincy, Illinois, and now living in Nashville. And then we're going to have Keith Anderson.
Okay.
And we're going to have it at the Augusta Fairgrounds, so anyone in Hancock County or any county can come.
And when is that?
May 14th.
So you're hoping that there isn't a thunderstorm that day, because that's an outdoor venue, isn't it?
That's a little hateful, wasn't it?
Well, no, May's pretty iffy,
No, it's going to be beautiful.
Oh, it will be beautiful.
It's going to be beautiful.
Pioneers often had a bumpy ride headed west. For WCAZ, that bumpy ride ended up in 100 years of operation. With another Illinois story in Carthage, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.